My small Showman'S engine needs some repairs, part 6. Removing the recently applied new paint from the flywheel as the subsequent coats reacted badly with each other. Touching in the damaged paintwork on the engine and cleaning some of the rusty parts. This paint job started badly and didn't get any better. Originally I was trying to demonstrate the other colour from HMG paints, and then I overcoated it using an old tin of Phoenix Precision paints, Crimson Lake, which was the correct colour, but the paint was old and had some bits in it. This is not normally a problem. Simply sand off the lumps and bumps in the paint and then repaint, but when I did that there was a reaction with the paint underneath. These synthetic enamel paints can be a little bit odd when it comes to overcoating. I've always found that it's okay if you overcoat quickly with not much time between the coats drying. At this stage I would like to mention I'm not a painter, I'm just a complete amateur. These comments are based just on my experiences from painting models over the years. I put the flywheel back into the food container, which contains cellulose thinners, where it was left for approximately 24 hours. This is what I found 24 hours later, a perfectly clean flywheel. All the paint had just dropped off it. All I needed to do was to use a couple of paint brushes to remove any paint that was left stuck to the part, particularly the paint down the hole in the middle. Quite soon the flywheel was looking very good. This time I don't need to put it in the lathe because using emery cloth, wet-to-dry sandpaper and Scotch-Brite I'd already keyed the metal on the flywheel to accept the paint. The remaining cellulose thinners in the tub is not looking very good now. I have used it quite a few times for removing paint and degreasing. How did I dispose of the cellulose thinners? Well, possibly in an unorthodox way. Outside my house there were some weeds growing through some cracks in the path to my house. I applied a small amount of cellulose thinners to each of the weeds, and over a couple of days the weeds were entirely destroyed. I'm sure someone's going to write in and tell me that I shouldn't do this, but in this case I freely admit it was what I used it for. And my garden path just contains some black marks where the weeds used to be. The good thing about cellulose thinners is it's very volatile and it evaporates quickly, but not before it destroyed the weeds. It's now time to go back to the outer part of my workshop, and what I'm doing here, and you have seen it before, is I'm spraying the part with etch primer. This is not a repeat of the original clip, it's completely new. And this time I'm not going to rush the job, I'm going to leave this to dry for quite a long time. And here, as usual, is a clip of the paint drying. Back down now to my other workshop because I need to do some minor repairs before I start to touch in the paintwork. This is one of the canopy supports. The machine screw wasn't tight and the brass nut on the top of it was stripped, so I tightened the machine screw, which held the bracket solidly onto the main support. Then I fitted a steel lock nut to replace the brass one, which was stripped anyway. And now, without further ado, it's top tip time. From a previous episode, the components on the bench are the check valves and the adapter pipe, a tin of LMS Crimson Lake gloss paint, and in the foreground are pieces of Scotch-Brite cut into convenient finger-like lengths. I want to use this Scotch-Brite to clean up the areas where I'm going to touch in the paint. And these narrow strips of Scotch-Brite are very useful, because if you use a large pad, you're more than likely going to damage other parts of the paintwork with the part of the pad you're not looking at. These small Scotch-Brite fingers can get into quite inaccessible places, for instance the crosshead guide, as well as the whistle rod. In fact, any parts that are showing signs of rust or grime or general dirt. Sometimes it's possible to touch in the paint just with the tip of a brush and fill a tiny mark. But generally speaking, it's a good idea to clean up the area with a piece of Scotch-Brite first. This is the paint that I'm using. It's an old rattle can full of LMS Crimson Lake. And I'm spraying some of this into the aerosol can's cap. When touching in damaged paintwork, try and prepare the surface and don't apply too much paint. Do it in more than one coat. I don't know who's touched this engine in before, they must have been colourblind, it's brown paint. And once again this piece of Scotch-Brite, approximately the width of my finger, is very useful. As can clearly be seen here, the first coat is not covering the damage. Some smaller areas can be covered in one coat, like this fixing bracket. Please be aware that all of these images are highly magnified and the paintwork looks terrible, but it isn't. The lining is quite good. And it's far better than my attempts at lining. This is something I cannot do. Even a simple job like running a brush down the edge of a tank. For some reason, when I get near the end of the line that I'm painting, the brush wobbles, and I've just painted the white line. It's not good enough to rub it off with your finger, by the way. I did use a cloth. Here I'm working my way around the tank, and I'm doing one of the sides, with the same problem. I keep getting paint on the white line. For any keyboard warriors whose fingers are hovering over the keyboard, don't bother. I know I'm rubbish at doing this, and I freely admit it. I've tried it many times, and I don't really understand it, because I do have quite a steady hand, until I put a paintbrush in it. But never mind, you can't be good at everything, as a few past girlfriends have mentioned, and I don't think they were referring to painting. I did get better with practice, but it's still not a perfect job. I repainted the front lamp bracket that I tightened earlier, and it still doesn't look too good, but that's due to the fact that it's a highly magnified image. I carried on working my way around the engine until I'd covered just about all of the damaged paintwork. And to conclude this episode, this is a shot of very small amounts of paint on the traction engine drying. Stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.